Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am MARIB with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the top stories first. India has recorded the world's highest daily coronavirus cases for the third consecutive day. The country reported more than 346,000 infections and some 2,600 deaths overnight. Pakistan has registered more than 5,900 new cases and 157 deaths, with the tally approaching 17,000. While globally there are more than 3 million fatalities and over 145 million infections. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations is holding a summit in Indonesia today to discuss the Myanmar crisis. Junta Chief Min Aung Hlaing and leaders from Malaysia, Thailand and Laos have arrived in Jakarta for the ASEAN summit. Activist state security forces have killed 745 people since a protest movement emerged to challenge the coup. The U.S. State Department has voiced deep concern over the escalation of violence in Jerusalem. In a tweet, spokesperson Ned Price said the hateful rhetoric of far-right Jewish protesters must be firmly rejected. Meanwhile, Israeli police scuffled with Palestinians for a second night amid mounting tensions over a ban on gatherings. In Russia, jailed opposition leader Alexei Navalny says he is gradually ending his hunger strike following examination by non-prison doctors. His health started deteriorating after he went on the hunger strike last month to demand proper medical treatment. And in football, Bernal Leno's own goal helped Everton beat Arsenal 1-0 in their Premier League face-off at the Emirates. The win gives Everton 3 valuable points in their quest for next season's Champions League. The Toffees are in 8th place with 52 points, 3 behind 4th place Chelsea. These were the top stories. News in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Now let's have the news in detail. India has recorded the world's highest daily coronavirus cases for the third consecutive day. The country reported more than 346,000 infections and some 2,600 deaths overnight. While globally there are more than 3 million fatalities and over 145 million infections. More on the coronavirus in this report. Amid record cases and vaccine news, the world still stands confused when the pandemic will start nearing its end. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau received his first shot of the AstraZeneca vaccine amid an unprecedented domestic surge. Chilean investigators testing the Oxford jab in 2,200 people found no instances of blood clots among participants. Brazil's health ministry says their vaccination program is being put at risk by people failing to show up for their second shot. In the US, lawmakers and non-profit groups urge the government to back a temporary waiver for vaccine to help poor countries. Meanwhile, in a hopeful trend for the US, COVID-19 cases fell 10% over the past week, but the wide gaps in vaccination rates across the country have raised new concerns.
We see on this map that vaccine coverage is not uniform across the country. Please note we have state-level data, but not county-level data for Texas and Hawaii. Otherwise, looking county by county, there are some unsettling gaps in our coverage. Some areas are doing very well, with greater than 65% coverage for those over the age of 65, as indicated by dark blue.
New Zealand has paused its newly opened travel bubble with Australia after a COVID-19 outbreak in its larger neighbour. The World Health Organization has once again condemned the global vaccine divide as it marked the first year of the COVAX scheme. Pfizer says it is planning a new version of its vaccine that can be stored in a standard freezer and comes diluted and ready for use. Meanwhile, the European Commission says it expects to seal world's biggest vaccine deal with Pfizer for 1.8 billion doses in the coming days.
Indeed, mRNA vaccines will be central to the EU's preparedness plan for fighting COVID-19 and other viruses. We are working with BioNTech Pfizer on a new contract. This contract will foresee the delivery of 1.8 billion doses for the years 21 and to 23.
In India, people scramble for life-saving oxygen supplies and COVID patients die on trolleys outside Delhi hospitals, as the Indian capital recorded the equivalent of one COVID-19 death every 5 minutes. World Health Organization says India's situation is a devastating reminder for the world to use all tools against COVID-19. Meanwhile, Kuwait has suspended all direct commercial flights from India until further notice. Meanwhile, Pakistan has reported its highest single-day death toll since the coronavirus pandemic began. The Health Ministry reported 157 fatalities and nearly 6,000 cases in the past 24 hours. It said almost 17,000 people have died of the virus in the country. Meanwhile, Pakistan's national positivity ratio has risen to 11.27%. More than 790,000 people have been infected so far, whereas over 686,000 people have recovered. There are more than 86,000 active cases in the country. Nearly 4,700 of them are in critical condition. Now, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations is holding a summit in Indonesia today to discuss the Myanmar crisis. Junta Chief Min Aung Hlaing and leaders from Malaysia, Thailand and Laos have arrived in Jakarta for the ASEAN summit. This is Min Aung Hlaing's first foreign trip since the February 1st coup that sparked Myanmar's bloody crisis. Dozens have gathered outside the ASEAN headquarters calling for democracy to be restored. Reportedly, ASEAN leaders want a commitment from Min Aung Hlaing to restrain his security forces. Activists say forces have killed 745 people since a protest movement emerged to challenge the coup. Now, the U.S. State Department has voiced deep concern over the escalation of violence in Jerusalem. In a tweet, spokesperson Ed Price said the hateful rhetoric of far-right Jewish protesters must be firmly rejected. The EU has also expressed concern and called on officials to show responsibility and reduce tensions. In a statement, the bloc said incitement and violence have to be rejected by all. Clashes broke out between Israeli settlers and Palestinians after far-right Jews marched toward Jerusalem. Israeli police also scuffled with Palestinians for a second night amid mounting tensions over abandoned gatherings. Meanwhile, Israeli Defense Forces claim to have hit Hamas military posts after alleging that 5 rockets were fired from Gaza. Now, in Russia, jailed opposition leader Alexei Navalny says he is gradually ending his hunger strike following examination by non-prison doctors. He went on the hunger strike last month after authorities refused him access to his personal doctor. In a social media post, Navalny said he will continue to demand a visit from his doctor to address a loss of sensation in his legs and arms. He also acknowledged the mass protests in his support across Russia. Navalny is serving a 2.5-year prison sentence for violating parole terms in an old embezzlement case. Pakistan says it is not having any talks with India at the moment. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi rejected the speculations during an interview. Qureshi said the UAE is not facilitating any dialogue between the two nuclear states. He added Pakistan never shielded away from talks, but it was India that had been shying away. Qureshi said for any dialogue, New Delhi must create a conducive environment. Referring to the US-Taliban Doha deal, he said it would not have happened without Pakistan. He said Pakistan has suffered a heavy economic and human loss due to the Afghan war and wants peace in Afghanistan. Moving on now, the Arab coalition says it has killed at least 45 Houthi rebels in the strategic MARIB province of Yemen. In an interview, Colonel Yahya al-Hatimi said the fighting has continued on all fronts for 24 hours. Al-Hatimi said the coalition carried out more than 18 sorties, destroying 4 Houthi military vehicles. He said Yemeni government forces seized control of new areas and cut off a key Houthi supply route. Meanwhile, the US has called for an end to the hostilities in MARIB, saying it is adversely affecting 1 million people. In a tweet, State Department spokesperson Ned Price said violence is overwhelming the humanitarian response. European Union lawmakers have called for suspending negotiations on Turkey's membership in the bloc. Lawmakers in the Foreign Affairs Committee voted 49 in favour and 4 against on their report on Turkey's EU candidacy. Spanish EU lawmaker Nacho Sanchez led parliamentary discussions. He said the report is probably the toughest ever in its criticism towards the situation in Turkey. He said it reflects all the unfortunate events that happened in Turkey in the last 2 years, particularly in human rights. The report goes to full plenary next month and, if accepted, becomes the Parliament's official position. EU governments say Turkey no longer meets the democratic criteria to be considered a candidate. Now, in Nigeria, gunmen have shot dead 3 students abducted from a university in northwestern Kaduna State. Armed men stormed Greenfield University, killing 1 person and abducting several students on Tuesday. Kaduna's Commissioner Samuel Aruvan said they found the remains of 3 students on Friday. The kidnappers still hold an unknown number of captives. Armed groups have reportedly struck northern Nigeria since December, kidnapping over 700 students for ransom. Security forces have largely been able to stop the attacks and contain the violence. Now, Sudan says it will take legal action if Ethiopia moves forward with the second filing of the Blue Nile Dam in July. Irrigation Minister Yasser Abbas said Khartoum is mulling several options if Ethiopia continues with its plans. In a series of tweets, Abbas said Ethiopia also rejected Sudan's invitation to a summit for negotiations over the dam. He said there is no justification for leaving the matter solely to the African Union, while rejecting AU-led mediation. Earlier talks in Kinshasa collapsed, with Cairo and Khartoum accusing Addis Ababa of insisting on the second filing of the dam. Ethiopia is pinning its hopes of economic development and power generation on the Blue Nile Dam, but both Sudan and Egypt fear the dam will imperil their water supply. Now, in Zimbabwe, 3 crew members and a child were killed after a military helicopter crashed into a house near the capital, Harare. The Air Force says 2 pilots and a technician died when the training flight crashed in Arcturus village. It is investigating the cause of the crash. Footage showed the smoldering wreckage of the helicopter near a house with a torn roof. Zimbabwe's Air Force complains its helicopters and fighter jets are too old, but it has not been able to buy new ones due to sanctions by Western countries. More news coming up after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, a French police officer has been fatally stabbed in a knife attack at a police station outside Paris. The 36-year-old attacker reportedly came to France from Tunisia several years ago. Police say they have shot dead the attacker. Anti-terror police have opened an investigation into the violence. President Emmanuel Macron said France had again been the victim of a terrorist attack. In a tweet, Britain's Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said the UK stands with France following the tragic incident. Now, a vaccine against malaria has shown up to 77% efficacy in a trial of 450 children in Burkina Faso over 12 months. Malaria kills more than 400,000 people a year, mostly children, in sub-Saharan Africa. The vaccine is developed by scientists at the Jenner Institute of Oxford University. Institute Dr. Adrian Hill said the vaccine is the first to reach the World Health Organization's goal of at least 75% efficacy. In a press briefing, he said scientists will conduct stage 3 trials in some 4,800 children in 4 African countries. The most effective malaria vaccine to date had only shown 55% efficacy in trials on African children. Brazil has approved a 24% cut to its environmental budget for 2021 from last year's level. President Jair Bolsonaro signed off on the 2021 federal budget that allocates nearly $365 million for the Environment Ministry. According to the official gazette, the allocated figure is down from around $474 million last year. However, the spending can be adjusted over the year. Bolsonaro vetoed a list of environmental budget provisions, including outlays for environmental enforcement. This comes just a day after he vowed to increase environmental spending at the climate summit hosted by U.S. President Joe Biden. Speaking at the summit, Bolsonaro pledged to double the budget and end illegal deforestation by 2030. Now, NASA and SPACEX have launched a 4-astronaut team on a flight to the International Space Station. The crew of 3 men and a woman is the first ever to be propelled into orbit by a rocket booster recycled from a previous flight. The Crew 2 mission blasted off from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. A SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket topped with the company's Crew Dragon capsule lit up the pre-dawn sky. The crew is due to arrive at the space station after orbiting some 400 kilometers above the Earth after a 23-hour flight. The mission marks the company's 3rd crew launch in less than 12 months. Now, in Spain's Basque County, a group of CHOCOLATIERS is creating a version of Pablo Picasso's masterpiece Guernica. That artwork represents the bombing of a small Basque town in 1937 by Nazi planes during the Spanish Civil War. Details in this report.
To showcase their skills and celebrate their cultural heritage, these chocolatiers are recreating Guernica. Picasso's piece is regarded by many as the most moving and powerful anti-war artwork in history. The immense cubist painting depicts a harrowing scene in black and white, full of tormented human and animal figures. For many Basque people, the memory of the bombing and Picasso's visceral artistic response are a part of their identity. About 40 local chocolatiers are marking the 85th anniversary of bombardment in their own way. The chocolatiers have been working in an industrial kitchen in the small town of Lezo. The project has been a technical challenge amid the vast size of the painting, which is almost 3.5 meters high and 8 meters wide. But the group has tackled the issue by making 14 separate chocolate slabs.
So we decided to portray the whole Guernica. There will be some details that we may have missed, but I think it turned out quite well. The whole Guernica is reflected.
The final result of the recreated artwork will be shown in several locations, including in the town of Guernica. The effort is also an attempt by the chocolatiers to draw attention to the high level of craftsmanship the profession requires.
Nine sports stories. Let's begin with football. Bernd Lenners' own goal helped Everton beat Arsenal 1-0 in their Premier League face-off at the Emirates. The win gives Everton 3 valuable points in their quest for next season's Champions League. Leno bundled Richarlison's low cross into the net in the 76th minute to decide the game. Gabriel Martinelli almost saved Arsenal in injury time, but Everton keeper Jordan Pickford kept out his shot. The Toffees are in 8th place with 52 points, 3 behind 4th placed Chelsea, while the defeat leaves the Gunners in 9th place on 46, 6 points behind Everton. Now in Brazil, surfers in Rio de Janeiro took to the city's fabled beaches as huge waves pounded the coastlines. They flocked to the waters of Copacabana Beach, known for its good surfing waves. The atypically large waves hitting multiple beaches provided the surfers with a wide range of options. Rio has been lashed by howling winds this week that have churned up enormous waves. The Brazilian Navy issued an alert for the city's beaches, warning that waves would reach up to 3 meters tall. According to the weather forecast, strong winds will reach 34 knots, stirring up the sea between Rio Grande do Sul and Rio de Janeiro. And now let's have a look at how the weather is doing around the globe. And that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News. Take care.